And we are live. Welcome. We are in our first little broadcast, hopefully of many to come, in our little intensive parent network Facebook group we got here. We are here with Marav Newman today, representing TASES and all of the wonderful things that come with TASES. Marav has been a pediatric PT for quite a few years now,
Yeah.
and has plenty of things to bring to the table, and has recently joined with the forces of TASES in the form of education and also in the form of practice in her clinic. And we are here to learn from all of the wonderful things that she has to offer and has to teach us all. So, Marav, if you could do us the joys of introducing yourself a little bit beyond my basic introduction, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining in. So I am a pediatric physical therapist. I practice in Brooklyn, New York. I have a couple practices, offices. My practice is called Dynamic Solutions. And I've been teaching TASES courses for a few years online. And then this year, I'm going to start really taking the show on the road. And I've done a couple in-persons, and I've got a bunch of them planned for 2024. So today, what I want to do is just introduce you to TASES, tell you a little bit about what it is. I also want to kind of challenge your thinking in some different ways from moving away from some traditional thinking to more of this new thinking that we're really embracing, and some of the basic kind of principles of TASES and how it can be really helpful for your kiddos with neuromuscular disease. So, so Kylie, do you want me to go ahead and share my screen, and then we can just like take off with a little bit of a presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we're going to have plenty of questions along the way, but our main structure for today is we really want to. So, in our parent network group, we have a mixture of therapists and a mixture of parents. So, our goal today is to really address, from a parent perspective, what does this look like for our children, and how that really could potentially impact our children, and how it could integrate into the therapy programs that we're doing to help our kids, but also from a therapist perspective, what that really looks like, and the training process and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to try and not be too technical. Some parts of this presentation may look really technical, but I'm just going to breeze over those because I do want to make it parent friendly, and I don't want to get caught up in the nitty gritty, like little details of it. I love this picture because it shows this really little dude with the e-stim on. He had some really significant asymmetries in his trunk and neck, and it wasn't a torticollis. It turned out to be something else. And we treated it with task-specific electric stimulation, and he did just fantastic. And so I just want to let you know that you can use TASES on babies as young as 4, 5, 6 months old. And it can make a huge difference really early on. And this little guy had the e-stim here going to the glutes, and then eventually we went up into the paraspinals, and you can't see it super great here, but he was really side bent when we first met, and he did really great. Common diagnoses that benefit from TASES are multi. So it really started out as treatment for children with cerebral palsy. And a lot of the basics are based on that, and a lot of the evidence is based on that. But we're really kind of moving forward these days and realizing that e-stim can really help a lot of our other kids. Fantastic with hypotonia, children that have low muscle tone and laxity, really great for alignment and strengthening. I have a whole program that I do with children with idiopathic toe walking. There's another woman that teaches classes that are very specific for spina bifida. We use TASES for genetic conditions, really effective for scoliosis and arthrogryposis. They're using a lot of TASES down in Florida at the Paley Institute for arthrogryposis. So I just thought I wanted to make everybody aware of that because it's important to realize. So the big principles of TASES, and I'm just going to go through these pretty briefly. You have the evaluation, which is a little different than a typical traditional physical therapy or occupational evaluation, is that we're looking a little bit more at movement analysis. And I'm just going to kind of say that. But when you take the course, you'll get more training about the evaluation. Muscle choice is it's like the big whammy. Like, how do you choose which muscle and for which task? So that we're going to spend a little more time on today. Parameters are very specific to the machine. I'm not going to do a lot of work around that today. We don't have enough time. But can you see me? This is the machine that I recommend. This is the one that I like. It's the Chattanooga Continuum. It's super, super effective. It's really good for our purposes. And I want to just show you. And it comes with a switch, a hand switch, so that you can really control the stimulation and like activate the very targeted specific muscle that you want to target at a very specific time during a movement. And then we have the fact that it's task specific. So we know that electric stimulation needs to be a form of FES to be effective, functional electric stimulation. And so we want you to be using e-stim during activities. So we're not just like putting the kids to bed and putting on e-stim and they're waking up strong. No, we're looking at the movement and seeing what the kid needs to make that a movement either more efficient or more successful or better aligned. And then we're picking the muscle according to that, and we're doing it during the movement. We know task specificity is everything when it comes to motor learning. And then there's a bit about orthotics, because I have a whole thing about solid AFOs and how I really don't approve and really feel like we need to let these kids be doing more movement and move towards more of a hinged AFO or SMOs or just inserts to just protect the foot and keep that aligned rather than doing as much immobilization as we do. So like, just for example, like here's a kiddo, we'll look at him and say, well, what does he need, right? So he has cerebral palsy, hemiplegia type, and what he really needs is to get his weight over on that left side. He needs to get the left leg stronger so he can be faster and more efficient. He needs to get his body over that leg so that he can push through, because it's really externally rotated and out to the side. So we want to kind of facilitate a more typical movement pattern. And then you have, so we do a lot of videos and then looking at the videos. I'm admitting someone else, by the way. There we go. So here's this little guy. Actually, he's not so little. He's kind of big. But he, like, you look at him here and you say, well, what do you think he needs? Well, I think that he's kind of crouched, right? His knees are flexed. He's not really up tall. He needs to be up taller. And he's kind of forward. Like when you look at his alignment, his head is really forward of his knees and feet, also not so great, right? So that's just a little bit of what we do with the beginnings of this. So one of the big things we do is look at alignment and posture. And just like where the base of support is, where the center of mass is. This is just like really basic PT stuff, but I think really, really important for us to get back to, because one of the big things with these kids is that they are not aligned. Their base of support is very wide, but oftentimes their center of gravity or their center of mass is outside of their base of support. And so one of the things that happens is when your line of gravity is outside of your base of support, or even if it's not completely outside of your base of support, if it's on the edge of being outside on the edge of your, you are going to have some sort of reaction to stay balanced. It's not a restful, static position that way. And our kids are in that kind of situation. Like all the time. And so it's a big thing with TASES that one of the first things you're going to look at is alignment and the line of gravity and where you think, you need to make that correction. So see this kiddo, he looks great. His line of gravity is right in the center of his base of support. He's very well balanced. He's not demonstrating any abnormal movement patterns. He's not really having to have a reaction. He can just kind of hang out there. Whereas when you look at this guy, right, his center of gravity or a line of gravity is pretty far outside or at the very edge of his base of support. So he has to do a lot of work here to kind of stay up. So one of the things I want to kind of talk to you about is, let's say that this kiddo's hamstrings are really, really tight, right? Why are they so tight? They're really tight because he's digging his heels in to hold on for dear life so that he doesn't fall backwards because of how far back his line of gravity or his center of mass is. So one of the things that I think really happens to our kids is their hamstrings are really overactive in this way, and we are calling them spastic, and then they are being treated for spasticity in the hamstrings, when in fact, perhaps we should just kind of be aligning them, and that might do the job. Same thing with this guy. See, like his feet are like all working in different ways, but look how far forward he is. So with TASES, what we're going to do is really work on, and I'm going to blow through some of this, just aligning the kid first. And that's how we're going to decide on which muscle we need to use. So when you're looking at your muscle choice, you're going to look at what are the goals for the class or the intensive or your treatment session, or why is the kid coming to you? That's important to know, right? And what are the body structures and function that are going on right now? Are you trying to improve certain structures? Is there a functional thing that you're trying to improve? Is it mobility? Is it sitting posture? Look at the evidence. What therapies are you going to use, and use your best informed expertise. And then you're going to figure out what you need. So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second because I want to have a conversation about this traditional view versus the new thinking. So one of the things that's kind of happening is we're just having a little bit of a shift in the profession. So traditionally, spasticity was really to blame for a lot of the problems that these children were having, as far as musculoskeletal issues in their joints and their spines and their hips. And all the therapy was centered around spasticity management. And at this point, we're questioning that. We're saying, hey, wait a minute. Maybe the spasticity is due to weakness, due to a weak muscle. Not due, but maybe, I shouldn't say due, but maybe the spastic muscles are weak. And maybe we need to be strengthening these spastic muscles and they will relax. And so some of the new thinking has to do with that. Do you guys want to say anything about that? Some of what we're doing is we're going in and we're strengthening spastic muscles, and we're not heating this. Don't stimulate the Achilles area or the calf area. It's already so spastic. Stimulate the dorsiflexor so that will relax. No, we're going in and we're stimulating spastic muscles, whether they're spastic or not. We're stimulating what needs to be stimulated and strengthened according to the movement pattern and the weakness.
Well, and I love this, and I love how revolutionary this is, right? And I think that's why TASES is so effective, is because in so many ways it completely counteracts what so many of us have thought and processed for years, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, I can't tell you how many families have come to me as a pediatric physical therapist myself and said, oh, my kid's legs, I mean, they're so strong with that spasticity. They're so strong. And I'm like, but here's the thing. They don't really have control
Right.
over
Their
that,
motor
right? It's
control
just
is,
half of,
yes.
right?
Right.
And so I think in that sense, by utilizing that
You're
electrical
so
stimulation,
right.
triggering that muscle to contract, it's not just a matter of making that spastic muscle, which for many kids is actually a weak muscle, stronger, but also it's giving them control over
Right.
that muscle. And I think
Right.
that
Yeah,
control is an even bigger piece, right? It's
it
I
is.
need to know
It is.
when and how and at the
Yeah.
right time to
Especially
use
as especially mid-range control, right?
Right.
Because they don't have the mid-range control. The reason a lot of them are up on their toes is their alignment, they're forward pitched, but also they're using their biggest, strongest postural muscle, which is their calf muscle, to stand up, but it's an all or none thing. They're like recruiting everything and they're using it at the end range. What we want mid-range control. So your calf muscle is your strongest postural muscle. It's the muscle we all need in order to stand, to run, to jump. And that's the muscle that we almost always start with TASES.
Well, and with spasticity, right? It's very much an all or nothing principle, right?
Yes.
Like that muscle is either firing or it's not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think by focusing on like that mid-range control is such a crucial point. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's where the difference is. In
Right.
really controlling that spastic muscle is
Right.
being able to not be 0 to 100, but find some way to control it in the middle.
Right. Like here's a really good illustration, right? So sarcomeres are our motor units and they are lined up in serial rows. And one of the things that we're finding out is, okay, so this is a typical muscle, typically developing child, the muscle. So here's the actin, and here the green is the myosin, and they overlap, and you've got the titin that's kind of making them, stay together. And here's your H band, which is the area when it's relaxed that is not overlapping. When you go ahead and get a contraction, the H band becomes a lot smaller and they overlap. And this is where you get force production. That's where strength comes from. Okay. Now, what happens with a child with cerebral palsy, and we know this is not like, me just making this up. This is from, they've done studies, muscle biopsies and things like that. What happens with children that have cerebral palsy is their sarcomeres, their actual sarcomeres, become longer and stretched out. And so that H band that I just showed you is further apart. So all of this is longer. And so when they go to contract, there's a longer way to go. They lose the force production. See the distance. Here's a normal muscle, and it has 3 sarcomeres in this amount of volume. And this is a muscle with cerebral palsy, and it has 2 sarcomeres in the same distance. So what you're getting is a decreased number of sarcomeres. And a decrease because they don't look, there's 2 here, there's 3 here. The decreased number of sarcomeres results in weakness. And there's decreased volume. We can tell. See these tendons, how much longer they are, and then the muscle belly length is shorter. And this is typical muscle. It's got a longer muscle length. And so this is kind of where we end up with all this weakness and you get this loss of force capacity. And so what we need to be doing, not to mention there's more, I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but they have fatty deposits and increased connective tissue and all kinds of things in their spastic muscles that is demonstrating to us that they're weak. The muscle is weak. And so what we want to do is strengthen instead of all this weakening and immobilizing, and let's immobilize the ankle because it's in too much plantar flexion. Well, perhaps if we allowed some movement and strengthening there, that muscle could be strong enough to function the way it should be. So I'm asking you to shift a little bit and really kind of consider this. This is where TASES, this is what TASES is really all about. And it's very effective. We have tons of really wonderful literature about how effective electric stim is for children with cerebral palsy. I mean, the literature is vast. I have like 95 articles. It's exploding. They're doing so great. And I'm really not advocating for much Botox anymore. You have to be careful with the Botox. The Botox has a place. I'm not saying it has no place, but there's not really a place for repeated Botox throughout a lifetime over and over and over. For that, there is no longer a place. What we are hearing is that the Botox needs to be at least 12 months apart. It needs to be only under the age of 4. And you need to be aware it will cause muscle atrophy and the muscle will rebound. The equinus will be back. It does not prevent the hyperextension, does not prevent the hip dislocation. And it's really the best time to do it is its first time. So I don't really advocate for it with my kids. There's some place for it, but for the most part, an ambulatory kid that is working on walking and has mobility, they really need to move. And so that's kind of where we are. That's the big thing with TASES, and we keep going on this. And the last really important bit, there's 2 more important bits I'm going to share with you. One is that children with cerebral palsy have a lot of calf weakness. In fact, there's a company that's doing the exoskeleton-like robots, and they are targeting only the calf muscle for these kids because that is the muscle that holds us up. So take a look at this kiddo who has a hemiplegia, and what do you see? You see this really like atrophied, hollowed out area where the medial gastroc should be. I am not going to be stimulating his anterior tip. I'm going to be, and he has a foot drop. I'm going to be stimulating his gastroc. And there's a whole course that will tell you why, and that will help you understand how to use the machine and how to make those choices and why I make those choices and all of that. But it's important to understand that these kiddos, the basis for the E-stim is alignment and strengthening of like the central postural muscles that a lot of times are no longer functioning that way. I have a whole thing for idiopathic toe walking that I do, which is really effective, and I'm trying to write a paper. But here's an example of this little guy. He has hemiplegia, and we're stimulating glutes and medial gastroc and working on his movement. He's got a hinge AFO or an SMO. He never goes into a solid, even though his foot drags sometimes or he trips. We don't use the solid. This is like during COVID at my house. I opened like my living room up and kids were coming over. It was crazy. So if you can see here, I want you to kind of see. Let's see if I can grab it. But you can kind of see his lefty is dragging. It doesn't really see that? It doesn't really get a ton of dorsiflexion, but it comes through anyways. And you say, why? Why is it coming through anyways? And it's because really good. Swing phase is mostly powered by momentum and inertia and potential energy. So the push off is what's creating the foot to come forward. And so that's one of the big things. You can see him flopping there. But if I showed you him today, he plays football and he has active dorsiflexion, really has active dorsiflexion. And I never stimulated the dorsiflexors. And he is nice and solid on his foot. Yeah, sometimes he gets internal rotation. Sometimes the knee still stops. I mean, he still has cerebral palsy. but he's doing fantastic. And here's another little one. She has spastic quadriplegia, and she is very rigid, and I use TASES here to get the knee flexion. So, I just really want to demonstrate to you that we use it for all different reasons. We're really very specific about which muscle we're going to, why we're going to that muscle. This is an example of latissimus with glute max. And what I do with him is I work on this kid. This makes him shift his weight back onto his heels, and he can like use his arms. His mom said to me, "My God, he's never come out." He went out to the waiting room and gave her a big hug. And she's like, he never lifts his arms that high because he's always like this in that fixing posture. And when you give those fixing muscles power, and the sensation, sometimes it's just sensory. They just, all of a sudden they feel their body. They let that go and realize, oh, like I need to use that for action. This is just an example of what we do with glute max. With glute max, we focus a lot on pelvic alignment and stability. This is, yes, a missing glute max. And the only other thing I wanted to talk to you about was just a little bit of talk about just AFOs and trying to advocate for more movement and really thinking about AFOs in a different way rather than using solid AFOs. Use less AFO, think mobility, think movement, think activity in order to get everything woken up. I've had a kid come into me. This was recent. She came in and she can run and she can jump, and she has significant hemiplegia, and she's got a lot of problems with her leg and foot, but she has all this function. And then she went to ortho, into the orthotist, and they put her in a solid AFO, like big, huge, clunky thing, and she can't run or jump anymore. So it's like, let's pay attention to like function versus structure. Like it is a balance, but like, so that's a really shortened version of the course. We do all the muscles. We do the pelvis, we do the trunk, we do the obliques, we do the hand, we'll do bicep, we'll do latissimus, we'll do thumb. And so there's just, a lot of information to go. So does anybody have any questions?
Merav, you are wonderful. Gosh, I love you.
Thank you. You're wonderful too. I think it's incredible you created this community.
Well, I appreciate it. So in this pediatric therapy intensive Facebook group, right, we have a mixture of therapists and we have a mixture of families, right? We're all centered around a similar purpose. Gosh, I love you, Beverly.
Thanks, Beth. Guys, I'm going to run to turn my oven off because I can smell something burning, but I'm going to be back in 3 seconds.
Oh, gosh. So if anybody has questions, feel free to prep them, and or if you want to drop them in the chat. If you don't feel like sharing them, that's fine. I will share. I will be your voice. But we will have plenty of questions from Merav when we return. No worries, this group will be, this is all recorded and we will be posting this later as well. So we will have this all to bask in all of this knowledge for a later time. Because that was a lot of information, but great information. Love that. So excited to take this course.
Thank you for setting up. And
are you doing it
for
person?
putting up the Zoom and just
of course.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Did you burn your house down?
I didn't burn my house down, but I burned my dinner.
Love that for you. That means it's a takeout night. It's fun. It's fine. Because this is a mixture of a group for therapists and a group for families, I have a couple of questions to kind of tie back to both of those populations and how it kind of wraps into the TASES world. So from a parent perspective, I know many of my families that I have worked with have seen this and gone, is this safe for my kids?
Yeah. It is. It's really safe. There's a new study in 2023 that I just sent out to everybody that's taken my course that just came out as a systematic review. It is safe for children with cerebral palsy and children with neuromuscular disease. There's a few precautions. We don't use it with children that have cancer. We don't use it with children that have infection, like an active infection. We don't use it over open lesions. And we don't use it with active seizures. So someone who's got uncontrollable like muscle spasm, not muscle spasm, infantile spasms that are like very active. I don't use it with them. But other than that, we're using it with pretty much all the kiddos. It's very safe. And you take it slow. You don't like start with like this huge technique contraction of the muscle. You start with just a little bit of tingling so they can feel the sensation. You maybe put the electrodes or the stickers, I call them stickers, on mom or dad so that they can feel that. You can let the kid kind of feel, put the sticker on and off, because the biggest problem is really the electrodes. The kids don't like how they feel coming off. So I'll have I mean, that's my biggest issue in life is, taking them off. They don't like them. And you just start with just like a sensation so that they get some more input. I think it really increases proprioceptive input. Sometimes it just gets the heels down and the weight shifted by just putting on the sensory component of it. And so you just start slow and you take your time to get kind of where you want to go, and you watch the expression of the kid. If you're really lucky, the kid will give you feedback. You have the parent with you so that they can tell you how they think their kid is reacting, so.
100%. We had a question come up. I can share, or if somebody in the group would like to verbalize, sure, you could do either way. I don't care. I'm flexible.
I'll ask. It's my question. So, just for the courses, so online, it looks like there's upper and lower quarter. Is there one that's recommended before that? It looks like they're both on the same day at the same time.
Yeah, so basically the online courses are 2 4-hour days. So the Saturday is the first day, and both upper quarter and low quarter take that. So it's basically that presentation I just gave you pulled out for 4 hours. So that we can go through the research and I can really kind of help you understand exactly how to choose the muscle much more specifically than what we just did there. And then we'll actually use the machine, turn it on. I'll teach you how to set the parameters. We do live labs, and that's for upper and lower quarter. We do that together. Then the second day is lower quarter only. And then the third day is upper quarter only. A lot of people just take all 3 of it. So that they can do all of it. And then the in-person classes, which are upcoming this year, there's going to be probably 5 or 6 of them. Those are not divided that way. Those are level 1 and level 2. So this year I'm just going to be teaching level 1, and then I'll probably do a level 2 towards the end of the year in New York. And that's going to, so the first one is upper quarter and lower quarter that I just mentioned, but it also includes some pelvis and trunk stuff, which is not included in the online. The online ones, you have to take another course, because it's like the online ones are 4 hours and they're online. So when you're in person, you get a lot more done, and it's a lot of live lab, and so we include more muscles and more problem solving. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no. And then I just had, so like if you were to do like an online one, would it be possible to go and sit in on a live lecture if it was closer to us, or would it be like a whole separate class?
Oh, I never considered that. I guess if you've paid for the online course and then all of a sudden an in-person comes near you, I think it's going to depend on attendance. Like if it's really crowded, then maybe not, because it's not really like a lecture. we do a lot of lab, and so it takes, I try to give everybody a lot of very personal attention because it's, you got to learn how to use it and feel it. So if it wasn't a crowded class, I think maybe possibly, I think I would just handle that like on an individual basis.
Yeah, I understand. I was just looking at the online classes, and then, I mean, I'm in Kansas and I see you're doing one in Oklahoma, but it's not till June. Like, I don't know if I want to wait till
Oklahoma
June.
one's popular a lot. Yeah, people are signing up for that. So yeah, but that's not till June, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any parents online, or are we all therapists? All therapists. Okay.
Looks like we're therapists today, but we're definitely going to have some parents watching the replays.
Oh, yes, definitely so.
One of my other big questions I had was, so let's say as a parent, I would love to get my child in with a therapist that's certified in TASES. How on earth am I supposed to find that? Now, that is given that they are not in this Facebook group and know that the database exists with the list of all of the attendance programs around the company that
Right, you're right.
includes their certifications. This is outside of that.
Yeah. So I created a website that has, the courses to buy them, but then I also added this registered therapists, and we've got everyone listed by email and location. So you can kind of, now that I'm looking at it, I wonder if we should change the order instead of making it alphabetical order, if we should make it by location, but that's always possible. Because as it gets bigger, I'm like, oh, wow, it's really, now you're like having to look, pretty carefully at.
You gotta dig a little bit. Definitely by location would be wonderful.
Yeah, right. By location might be better. Yes, yes.
But that's amazing that we have that resource. The other potential thing that we could include in that in the future, just brainstorming, is if there is multiple levels of the TASES course dictating on there.
Yeah, it's on there. It is. You couldn't see it. It was on the other part of the screen because I have a few things on my computer, but it's on there. Like, yeah, there's different levels of.
Amazing. So you get to see just how far along that therapist is. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, wow, this was great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I just want to check and make sure I got all of my questions answered. Yeah, I think we did. Beautiful. We did a good job. Let's go.
Did a really good job getting through. We said 45 minutes to an hour, and it was perfect. I hope this was sort of informative. Rachel, do you feel like you got an idea of kind of what's coming? Great. I'm so glad you
excited. I'm looking at the classes now and just looking at, I mean, it's really interesting, and I just to hear more therapists talking about that mid-range control and how we need to strengthen those muscles in that mid-range, and that's the, that's kind of that shift of moving towards. It's just really interesting to hear different
kind of exciting. Yeah, it's exciting
to use and bring to kiddos, for all across the country. So
yeah, agreed.
Amazing. And for those families that are watching the replays back later, if you do have any questions that were not answered in this little broadcast presentation of sorts, Marav is in our Facebook group, so you could always tag her with some questions later, and hopefully you would be willing to answer them. I know you have in the past.
Yes, I would love to. I'm here. I'm really passionate about just access for everybody and making sure that, this isn't like, oh, a few handful of therapists know how to do this in the country. I really want to get a lot of, availability to disseminate the information and get to the point where every child has access to the therapy as they need, without having having the limitations of like location and travel and just having someone trained. So that's my mission. So yes, I'm totally willing to answer questions anytime.
Well, and that's part of the reason I found you and wanted to have you as our first presenter in this group, because that completely aligns with the missions of this group in the first place. I mean, I created and founded this Facebook group as a platform for families to connect to those resources and learn about those things and connect with the therapists and the knowledge that is there in order to better find the therapies that they need for their child and know what's out there. And to being able to connect with therapists in such a unique, close-knit fashion is the bread and butter to what I do and why I do what I love. So this is awesome and wonderful and fantastic. And with
Yeah.
that being said, I think I am ready to stop the recording.
Okay, perfect.
But let me hit record. We can always hang out afterwards. But
Yeah, totally.
for those that are tuning off to the recording, thank you so much for joining in. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Facebook group. And